sort of taunted and harassed online, bullied online. Then you have you have doxing. Doxing is where someone releases your personal information, such as your address, your phone number, to other people and say, "Hey, this person is a prostitute or a sex worker. Give her a call." And that kind of harassment. Then, of course, you have the sexual harassment, where the harassment takes a sexual nature. People sending, dick pics. A lot of young girls get dick pics from random guys who they've never met, or sometimes from people they do know. And then you have revenge porn, which is actually one of the most common forms of cybersexual violence, where generally intimate partner, so your boyfriend, or your girlfriend. The vast majority of these cases is actually men or young boys doing it to girls and women, where they ask them as evidence of their love to send them a nude pic. And these young girls get duped into it, and they send a nude pic because sometimes the boyfriend threatens to break up the relationship, or sometimes they do it out of consent, right? You are young, you're in a sexual or romantic relationship. It is difficult to physically meet all the time, especially in the pandemic. So you have a sexual relationship over the internet. And that's okay, And so you have, girls who then tend to send nude pics to their intimate partners. And then this is used as a form of blackmail. And what actually happens is that, there are networks of these young men and boys, sometimes in boys' schools, who are trading nude pics of young girls, as if they are, the superhero or sports persons playing cards, which we used to trade. I don't know whether children still play those games, but when I was in school, we had this sort of cards of superheroes or sports people, cricketers. And the cards would have different statistics in them, and you could trade one card for a better card and things like that. It was like a game almost, collector's items. But boys are now doing that with pictures of girls, depending on which school they went to, what grade they are in, and how old they are. So the younger a girl from a more prestigious Colombo school will give you higher points. It's become a game. And a lot of the time what these boys do is they dupe these girls to sort of be their girlfriend, confess their love for them, make them fall in love with them, get their nude pics, and then start blackmailing them, and trading them with other boys. So there's been a lot of those cases over the last few months, in the last 2 years. And it's terrible. And what parents should do is really inform and educate their children so that they're able to protect themselves. We cannot take away the internet from our children, and neither can we take away the mobile phone or a laptop. But if we are so eager and willing to give them access to the internet, the mobile phone and a laptop, we need to educate and inform them how they can protect themselves. You need to have these difficult conversations with your children. It shouldn't actually even be a difficult conversation, because this is about protecting your children. You have to let them know that if anyone asks them for a nude pic, that they should say no matter who that person is, even if they love that person. And that they should, especially if they're a child, inform their parent if this has happened. It's impossible in this day and age for a mother and father or a single parent to be constantly observing what the child is doing on their phone. You can't do that. It's impractical. You can't be monitoring WhatsApp conversations or Telegram conversations or their Snapchat or their Instagram. But you can educate them on how to protect themselves when these things happen. And if a parent does have a child to whom this has happened, don't blame the child. Don't slap your daughter or son. Don't say that they brought you shame. Be on their side if they become a victim of this. Tell them it's okay, that it's going to be okay, and that you are going to protect them and you are going to help them seek justice for this. And even if your child hasn't come forward to you right now, I don't know if there are any parents watching this or would be parents. A lot of the time, this could be happening to your friend and your child right now, and you would have no idea it's happening. The evidence is showing that, probably about 50% of Sri Lankan women are becoming a victim of this. They're facing some form of cybersexual violence. So those are very high statistics. So it's very likely that pretty much means, out of every two friends you have, one of them is experiencing this or has experienced this. If you have two children, one of them has experienced this or will be experiencing this. So you need to, even if they haven't told you, tell them now, look, these things happen. This is quite common, this form of cyber revenge porn or cyber sexual violence. If it is happening to you, tell me, please, because I'm going to be on your side. I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to ask you why you sent that picture. Please don't ask that question, because that picture's already been sent. So there's no point asking why you said it. Look at how you can support your child and your friend, how you can resolve it. You can file a complaint with the police. You can send letters of demand to the individual. Now, there are lots of avenues legally that you can take to protect your child from this kind of violence.
Yes, as you said, many schoolboys are now trading nude pictures of girls, and also they try to sexually harass girls. So, what is the reason for this? Where did we go wrong? Is it the education system?
Yes, it's 100% education. It all comes down to education. If we are always telling girls to protect themselves from boys. We are always telling girls, oh, you don't go out at this time, you don't dress like this, don't do this, because boys are going to come and rape you and do all these things to you. But in reality, what we should be doing is telling our boys how to behave, telling our boys to respect girls and women, telling our boys not to do these things, not to excuse their behavior, saying boys will be boys. We have reduced being male, being masculine to a barbarian, and that shouldn't be it. We treat men like barbarians. We give them excuse for barbarians, and therefore they become barbarians. We are not educating them on how to respect genders, all genders, how to respect women especially, how to handle matters of a sexual nature. We are not teaching boys consent, that someone has to consent to something before you can do something to them or with them. But girls and women are able to consent and should be consenting before they're going to do something with them. We're not teaching those very, very important values. We're not having these very important conversations with our boys. So it's 100% failure of the education system.
Yes. So what is your view on gender-based violence and gender-based equality in Sri Lanka right now?
Especially the last 2 years, I've been quite vocal, saying that there were two pandemics going on in Sri Lanka. One was, of course, COVID-19, and the other was violence against women, and violence particularly by men against women. Sometimes people call me a man hater. I'm a man myself, but I think as men we have to accept facts and statistics. We can't just say, "Oh, I don't beat women up, therefore I'm not responsible for this." We have to take the responsibility. because it is our gender, our privilege, which is allowed for this sort of this pandemic of violence against women. Um, statistics show about 2 out of every 3 Sri Lankan women are victims of violence. Are or will be victims of domestic violence. It's a huge statistic. Look, every 3 women 2 of them are victims of violence. 90% of Sri Lankan women have faced sexual harassment while using public transport. It's everyone. Onaliy, I don't know whether you've used public transport or on the street. I mean, have you been sexually harassed?
No.
Never? Okay, so you're that lucky small percentage which hasn't faced that in public transport. But 90% of women are experiencing this. So it's a really black mark on our society. You have so many stories of men coming in, they say jakkahana, coming and masturbating in front of a woman in a bus. They have no shame. They have zero sense of accountability and dignity. Because why are they so confident that they can come on, on really no one? So, and of course, I'm not denying that there are instances of violence against men by women, but I mean, let's look at the statistics here. It's so hugely predominantly done by men against women that it's a pandemic of its own. It's a societal problem of its own. And it needs to be addressed and resolved. And that goes through every aspect, gender inequality in our society. It really runs through every aspect. You're seeing this from corporate officers, boardrooms, leadership. I mean, leadership is a very good example. You look at our parliament. Only about 5% of parliament is women, are women. So we have 5% representing 52% of the population. Right? There are 52. The majority of Sri Lanka's population are women. That should be reflected in parliament because they're making decisions for women too. But there just aren't enough women representing the 52%. So how can we call ourselves a representative democracy when actually those 52% of women are not being adequately represented in parliament? And we look at this from the boardrooms of companies, and we look at government institutions. If you look at all the senior leadership, from the secretaries to the DGs, they're all men. You'd be lucky to find a woman there. But when you look at the lower ranks, I mean, you look at the actual statistics of how many women are actually working in these organizations, sometimes it's more women than men are working in them. About 60% of universities in Sri Lanka is female. And so the vast majority of university students are women. And same in the public service, close to 60% of public servants are female. So why are they not being given leadership opportunity? If women are clearly more educated, because there are more of them in university, and clearly they are more capable, why are they not being given opportunity to take leadership positions? That's the patriarchy. That's the inequality. There are men at the top. It's an old boys club. And that old boys club is preventing women from coming up. They put all kinds of barriers in between to prevent women from climbing that ladder and taking up those positions. And that needs to be called out, and it needs to be addressed if we are to move forward as a society.
And so now we are facing a huge economic crisis in Sri Lanka. So how will this create an impact for the children, for their protection?
Generally, when you look at any society, when they go through economic crises or political crises, the most vulnerable in society is always the most affected. Children fall into that category. They are amongst the most vulnerable in our society. They can't defend themselves. They can't feed themselves, look after themselves. They're dependent on someone else. They always will be dependent on someone else until they become adults. So that makes them extremely vulnerable. And in economic crisis of this situation, there are a lot of issues which will affect them, from basic things such as being able to have the right nutrition. There are already warning signs that the generation of children being born right now in Sri Lanka will be suffering high levels of malnutrition because they will not have access to the necessary nutrients and proteins which they need to grow. So you're going to see a lot of children born right now in these next few years will suffer from stunted growth and other forms of malnutrition deficiencies and other health conditions which will come. Then you have, the medicine shortages. This will affect children's access to medication. The electricity shortages will affect children's ability to go to school, to study. Paper shortages affect their ability to sit for exams. Already with the pandemic, the delay in schools, the closure of schools has meant that children are taking longer to graduate from school. They've had huge disruptions to their education program. They've had huge disruptions to their socialization. Children are just not meant to only study books. They're also meant to socialize as human beings. Especially the younger years of a human being are so important, so formative in shaping them. So all of this is being denied to children as a consequence. What you'll also see is, when you have economic crisis of this nature, you will have unemployment. When unemployment rises, or when you get family issues, domestic violence increases, alcoholism increases, not through legal alcohol, but sort of illegal alcohol like moonshine. And then children become a victim of violence, not just physical violence, but also sexual violence as a consequence. When families fall into destitute, and we had this in Sri Lanka more widespread about 40 years ago, is a lot of children were sold into sexual slavery by their own parents. So you have the risks of sexual slavery, pedophilia also increasing during this time. So we really have to look out for our children because things will be getting worse in Sri Lanka for the next 6 to 12 months. And the consequences of this crisis will have a generational impact. And we really have to be careful of that and really have a close eye, not just our own children, but our friends' children, other children we know, see what we can do to, ensure that there's as much protection as possible.
So, finally, what is your message to the society about child protection and gender-based equality?
My message is, children are our future. They are present and our future. And if we don't give them the right kind of support and foundation, then you risk the foundation of the entire societies that we have built. So we have to place children first, and their priorities must be our priorities. And we have to do our utmost to ensure that they are informed, they're educated, they're looked after, and they're also allowed their own agency. That they're not seen just as sort of helpless bodies, but children have their own thoughts. They have their own aspirations and ambitions. So encourage that, support that, respect their agency and the individuality, and do all you can to ensure that there is a better generation of children, a generation that is better than ours, a generation that is better than the one before us. That is everyone's responsibility. For gender-based inequality, we are a country which has produced great female leaders throughout our history, not just our post-colonial history. We are a country which gave women, one of the first countries in the world to give women the right to vote. We are a society and culture which should ideally treat women with the dignity and equality that they are entitled to. Their constitutional rights. No, I just lost power. And we must not just do all what we can, but we must also call out when we see inequality against women. We can't stay silent. We shouldn't stay silent. If you are seeing a woman is not being given a job because she's a woman, call that out. If you're in a company where there aren't enough women in the boardroom or in senior positions, ask those questions from your boss. When I'm a lawyer in the UK, and when I joined my law firm in the UK about 12 years ago as a junior first-year trainee lawyer, one thing I noticed in my cohort of 130 lawyers which joined our law firm, so it's this huge law firm, was that there was only one black person with me, and she was half black. And I asked the managing partner, who's equivalent of the CEO of a company, I asked the managing partner, where are the black people? You speak of equality and diversity and inclusion, so where are they? It just can't be that there aren't enough qualified black people to be lawyers, just like there should not be an insufficient amount of qualified women to be leaders, because the statistics are showing there are more women in universities. There are more women who are way more qualified than men. So where are they in leadership? So also don't be afraid. You can be a junior. You can be young, but do not be afraid to ask a difficult question and be part of that change. You can come on board and help the company to see how you can make that change. I did that with my law firm. I joined the diversity inclusion committees and said, I'm going to be part of this change in how we can make this firm more inclusive to different people. So don't be afraid to call out. Don't be afraid to be proactive. We have to get in there if you want to see these changes, because change takes time. You start something today, you won't see the outcome of it for the next 15, 20 years, right? But that outcome will be so profound that you and everyone else will have a far better quality of life. So be part of that change.
Thank you so much, sir, for joining with us today and sharing your valuable knowledge and views with us. It's a great pleasure and it's a great honor to have you with us today. Thank you so much, and we wish you success in all your future endeavors. Thank you so much, sir. And also, we thank all other participants for witnessing the second chapter of Straight Talk, and very soon we will be meeting you with the third chapter of Straight Talk. So with that, we are marking the conclusion of Straight Talk. Thank you everyone for joining, and have a good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, sir.